Hello, it's Pastor Penny. I bet you knew that. I bet you knew because you expect that. You expect me to be here every day. But what if you didn't know it was me? What if the mask really threw you? Um, have you really looked that closely at my eyes in the last year or so that you could recognize me that way? I'm sure you probably know my voice. Um, uh, so we had a deacon meeting today, and we haven't met in a while, and it was just nice to get together. We socially distanced and wore masks, and we had a long meeting because, of course, we had to cover. We got way off the agenda, which was, and a lot of that was my fault. Um, but we had to cover lots of things, um, and most of them had to do with the church. But I looked around while we were talking, and I thought, I can only see your eyes, everyone. And isn't that, it was a little disconcerting, even though I knew who they all were and they knew who I was. Um, but with the with people wearing masks now to keep you safe and to keep me safe, um, maybe we need to learn how to communicate more with our eyes or sign language. Um, and people who don't have all their senses, like those that are who are blind and who are deaf, have heightened senses in other ways. People who are blind, for instance, apparently can hear nuances, things that we wouldn't pay any attention to or just would not know. Um, so how do we form an opinion of someone? Um, do we watch them talk? I like to look at people's faces when I talk to them. Not everyone does. Uh, I thought of this poor man who was in Central Park, who was a bird watcher, and he just asked this white one. He was African American. He asked this white woman to put a leash on her dog because it was illegal and it was scaring the birds apparently. And so then he filmed her calling the police and saying he was threatening them and her and her dog and just lying. And he got it all on film. And he is a Harvard grad and an ornithologist, a bird watcher, and yet because he was black, she judged him in a negative way. And it's going on way, way too much. Any of it is way too much. And how much do we need to see in order to judge someone? How much do we need to hear? Um, think about if you were blind. How would you judge that person? You can't see what they're wearing. And then there was Jesus who ate with sinners and didn't care what people wore, knew the woman who had been bleeding for years in a crowd, and she touched the hem of his garment, and he knew. Now, most of us wouldn't know if someone touched the hem of our garment, but it didn't matter. Her socioeconomic status did not matter, and he healed her because she had faith and believed in him. And that's, boy, there are so many parts in the Bible, stories where, I mean, Jesus came for the lost and the ones who couldn't speak up for themselves. the marginalized and the lonely. And um, he didn't care when he went to temple what kinds of fancy robes the Pharisees wore or the high priests. He didn't care about any of that. And so think about that, and how do you judge people? How do we all judge people? Or judge maybe is too harsh a word. How do we decide what that person uh, is like? What is their personality? What is their heart? Do they have an authentic and kind heart, no matter what they look like or how they're dressed? Um, it's it's a lot to think about, and it's awful that this is just really horrible that it continues to go on in society, all this racism and prejudice, and and so I guess you can pretend you're wearing your WWJD What Would Jesus Do bracelet. Remember those from a very long time ago, but the concept is good. uh, and so I hope that gives you something to think about, and I'm so glad that we uh, are together as a church family. Blessings.